जितने जल्दी हो सके हम लोग तब तक।
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी। हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, दंडवत प्रणाम।
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, दंडवत प्रणाम।
दंडवत प्रणाम प्रभु जी, जय माता जी, हरे कृष्णा। I'm on another call. Maybe in 2 minutes I will join.
ओके प्रभु जी।
वो अकेले बेचारे 3 बजे 3:30 बजे आएंगे, प्रभुपाद 1-1.5 घंटे अकेले आने से अच्छा है हम लोग ही मैनेज कर।
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, दंडवत प्रणाम।
दंडवत प्रणाम। जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदानंदना जय ब्रज जनरंजना जय ब्रज जनरंजना जय यशोदानंदना जय ब्रज जनरंजना जय ब्रज जनरंजना यमुना तीरावनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी ओ यमुना तीरावनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदानंदना जय ब्रज जनरंजना जय ब्रज जनरंजना जय यशोदानंदना जय ब्रज जनरंजना जय ब्रज जनरंजना यमुना तीरावनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी यमुना तीरावनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजना यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजना यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदानन्दना जय ब्रज जनरञ्जना जय यशोदानन्दना ब्रज जनरञ्जना यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद। श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, गौर भक्तवृंद की जय, गौर प्रेमानंद की जय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साधुवैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादां सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितं च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी विश्वभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरु दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्री चैतन्य ईश्वर। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। So we will finish this 8th verse today. Okay, so we will read something from the purport today. At the time of death, the mind and intelligence of a living entity create the subtle form of a certain type of body for the next life. If the mind suddenly thinks of something not very congenial, one has to take a corresponding birth in the next life. On the other hand, if one can think of Krishna at the time of death, he can be transferred to the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan. So, first I will read the verse again. तन्नामरूपचरितादिसुकीर्तनानु स्मृत्यो क्रमेण रसना मनसि नियोज्य तिष्ठन् व्रजेतद् अनुरागी जनानुगामी कालं नयेद् अखिलमिति उपदेशसारम्. One of the most important verse of this nectar of instruction. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. Thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Braja, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So we had our major discussion on the mind last week, how mind is a friend and how mind is an enemy, and how mind decides our next birth. Attachment to mind decides our future. And now we go to the second aspect of it. So once again we begin from, and today we will discuss the rest of the purport. Here it is very important purport. There are a lot of deep points in this particular purport, so we'll try to extract some of those for our today's discussion. At the time of death, the mind and intelligence of a living entity create the certain form of a certain type of body for the next life. Create the subtle form of a certain type of body for the next life. If the mind suddenly thinks of something not very congenial, one has to take a corresponding birth in the next life. So mind puts us in a very precarious situation. If at the time of that it remembers something which is not very congenial, if you see in our day-to-day life also many thought comes which may not be very congenial. But if at the time of death mind remembers something not very congenial, then one has to take a corresponding birth in the next life. So this moment of death decides kind of a major impact in our journey. On the other hand, if one can think of Krishna at the time of death, he can be transferred to spiritual world, Golok Vrindavan. So very important, how can we become absorbed in Krishna? That's why it is said life is an preparation and death is an examination. Means that moment decides. This process of transmigration is very subtle. How things happens is very subtle, and Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita has declared it. Whatever you remember time of death, you attain that still without fail, O Arjuna. Therefore, Rupa Goswami is advising us, he advises devotees to train their mind in order that they will be unable to remember anything other than Krishna. So this is the goal of life, is we have to train ourselves in such a way that we don't remember anything other than Krishna. Any desires that we cultivate at this point of time, which is other than Krishna, may capture our consciousness at the time of death, and then we are given a suitable birth for that. Therefore, Rupa Goswami is advising devotees to train their mind. in order to, so that they will remember nothing is other than Krishna. Similarly, the tongue has to be trained to speak only of Krishna and taste only Krishna Prasad. Tongue has to be trained, mind has to be trained. Tongue has to be trained not to speak anything other than Krishna or something related to Krishna about service, but limiting it to favorable directly Krishna or centered around Krishna in some form or the other, and to taste only Krishna Prasad. Tongue has to be trained. Srila Rupa Goswami further advises Tishthan Braje. Tishthan Braje. One should live in Vrindavan or any part of Brajbhumi. Brajbhumi or the land of Vrindavan is supposed to be 84 krosas in area. 1 krosa equal 2 square miles. So 84 krosas became 168 square miles. That is the Rajbhumi, the area of Rajbhumi. When one makes Vrindavan his residence, he should take shelter of an advanced devotee there. In this way, one should always think of Krishna and his pastimes. So one should always think of Krishna and his pastimes under the guidance of an advanced devotee and live in Vrindavan. This is further elucidated by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. These are very deep subject matter. And if you see here in the purport, Rupa Goswami says, Tishthan Braje tad anuragi jananugami kalam nayed akhilam iti upadesha saram. Iti Upadesha Saram means sar means essence, the essence of all the Upadesh. This nectar of instruction is called Shri Upadesha Amrita. Upadesha Amrita. Amrit means nectar and Upadesh means instruction. So Upadesh Amrita, written by Rupa Goswami, is translated in by Srila Prabhupada as nectar of instruction, Upadesha Amrita. And the sar of all the Upadesh, Rupa Goswami is saying, Tad Nam Rupa Charit Adi Sukirtananu. Remembering the name, form, charita, qualities, character, pastime. Smritayo, remembering them. Kramena rasana manasi niyojya. And manasi niyojya means nicely engaging the mana in nam, roop, charita, adi of smritayo, remembering the name form qualities. In this way, engage the mind nicely in remembering these things. Tishthan Braje, reside in Vrindavan, tad anuragi jananugami. Anugami means follow. Anuragi Vaishnava. Follow Anuragi Vaishnava. Anuragi Vaishnava means one who has deep attachment to Krishna. One who is a pure devotee having a deep attachment to Krishna. Live in Vrindavan under guidance of a Anuragi Vaishnava, a pure Vaishnava. And under his guidance, Manasi Niyojya, always engage the mind in Tad Nam Rupa Charitadi Sukirtananu, in always remembering, nicely remembering, Smritayo Kramena, always nicely remembering the name, form, character, pastimes of the Lord. Kalam Nayet, Kalam means do this all the time. Kalam Nayed Akhilam. Akhilam means Akhilam iti Upadesha Saram. Do this in this way, engage 24 hours. And Akhilam means all the Upadesh. Akhilam iti Upadesha Saram. The essence of all the instruction is this. And that's what Prabhupada translate. The essence of all advice or Upadesha Sar is that one should utilize one's full time. And here it is translated as Kalam Nayed. Kal means time. Kalam, time. And Nayed means should utilize. Akhilam, full. One should fully utilize one's full time in nicely chanting, remembering the divine, the Lord's divine name, form qualities and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Vrajetishtam, and serve Krishna under the guidance of a devotee. Serve Krishna under guidance. Tad Anuragi Jananugami, under Anuragi Vaishnava, under the guidance of a devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of Lord beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So deeply attached to his devotional service is called Anuragi Vaishnava. And Prabhupada describes about detail about rag here. So we will begin our reading from here. On the other hand, if one think of Krishna at the time of death, he can be transferred to spiritual world Golok Vrindavan. This process of transmigration is very subtle because a lot depends upon the mind at the time of death. Therefore, Rupa Goswami advises devotees to train their mind in order that they will be unable to remember anything other than Krishna. Similarly, tongue should be trained to speak only of Krishna and to taste only Krishna Prasad. Srila Rupa Goswami further advises, Tishtham Raje, one should live in Vrindavan or any part of Rajbhumi. Rajbhumi on the other or the land of Vrindavan is supposed to be 84 krosas. 1 krosa is 2 square miles. When one makes Vrindavan his residence, he should take shelter of an advanced devotee there. Anuragi Jananugami is take shelter of an advanced devotee there. In this way, one should always think of Krishna and his pastimes. Yes, Smritayo. Smritayo means always remember. Tad Nama Rupa Charitadi Sukirtanano. Always remember Krishna and his pastime. This is further elucidated by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This is a very important verse. This and the next verse both. Krishnam smaram janam chasya preshtham nija samihitam tat tat katharatas chashau kuryadvasam raje sada. A devotee should always reside in the transcendental realm of Vraja and always engage in Krishnam Smaram Janam Chasya Preshtam, the remembrance of Sri Krishna and his beloved associates. Krishnam Smaran. Krishnam Smaran, remembrance of Krishna. Janam Chasya Preshtam, and Preshtam is like his beloved. Janam, all his beloved associates. So Rupa Goswami says one should remember Krishna and his beloved associates. Beloved associates means one should remember Krishna and Srimati Radharani, Mother Yashoda, Nanda Baba, Krishna's friends. So in that way, one should remember Sri Krishna and his beloved associates. By following in the footsteps of such associates and by entering under their eternal guidance, one can acquire an intense desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead by following in the footsteps of such associates. So one should hear about Krishna, one should hear about all the devotees of Krishna, and then one should follow in the footsteps of the associates of Krishna. Or one should follow in the footsteps of pure devotees of Lord Krishna under their guidance. And by doing that, one can acquire an intense desire to serve Shri Krishna. So live in Vrindavan. If you cannot live physically in Vrindavan, mentally live in Vrindavan. How to mentally live in Vrindavan? Well, it will come over a period of time. Mentally live in Vrindavan means you can remember a place of Vrindavan. When you are mentally, say in your mind, if you are chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, you are actually in Vrindavan. Because when you remember Krishna, you should know that Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. And the moment you remember Krishna, that's a Vrindavan consciousness. If one cannot live physically, one should live mentally. Live in Vrindavan and become attached to a devotee of Lord Krishna who is deeply attached to Lord Krishna, who is an associate of Lord Krishna. And by remembering and by following in the footsteps of devotees who are deeply attached to Lord Krishna, a desire will awaken within our heart to also serve Lord Krishna in Vrindavan. That desire will come. Okay. Again, Srila Rupa Goswami states in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, this is one of my favorite verses also. Seva sadhaka rupena siddha rupena chatrahi tadbhava lipshuna karya vraja lokanusarataha. Very, very nice verse. Seva sadhaka rupena, in the transcendental realm of Vrajdham, one should serve. So what do we do in Vrindavan? When we live in Vrindavan, either physically or mentally, one should serve Lord Krishna with a feeling similar to that of his associate. Um, and one should place himself under the direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna and should follow in his footsteps. This method is applicable both in the stage of sadhana, spiritual practices executed while in the stage of bondage, or in the stage of sadhya, God realization, when one is a Siddha Purush or a spiritually perfect soul. So, there are two stages of advancement in devotional service. One is a sadhaka stage, one is a siddha stage. Sadhaka stage, um, um, when we are trying to develop love for Krishna, we are not, that is sadhaka stage. Like what we are now is sadhaka stage. We are sadhakas. Um, Sadhakas are those who perform sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti is hearing, chanting, who are in this material world and who are trying to love Krishna. So this is called sadhaka stage. And then there is something called siddha. Siddha stage means perfected stage. Sadhaka stage means uh, aspiring to be a pure devotee. That's sadhaka stage. Siddha stage means um, uh, perfected stage. Um, okay. Um, how how okay. How do we attain a siddha stage? So um, there, I mean, it's a, I'm trying to see how to explain this concept. Um, uh, anyways, let me continue further. Two more paragraphs. Prabhupada will explain that more clearly. And then before this discussion, I will summarize this paragraph also. Hopefully, Prabhupada will explain it everything nicely. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented as follows upon this verse. One who has not yet developed interest in Krishna consciousness should give up all material motives and train his mind by following the progressive regulative principles, namely chanting and remembering Krishna and his name, form, qualities, pastimes, and so forth. So one who has not yet developed interest in Krishna consciousness, or who has not become deeply attached to Krishna, one who has not attained that pure love for Krishna, that deep interest in Krishna consciousness, should give up all material motives. Naturally, one who is not deeply attached to Krishna will have many material motives of fame, wealth, opposite sex. One will have many material motives. Um, so those people should give up all material motives. How to give up all material motives? One has to train oneself. At least it begins with faking it. Okay, I don't want this, even though in the inner core of my heart I want all these things. Just saying that I don't want it is like faking it, and gradually not acting on those desires. Some when desire comes, no, I don't want this, I'm happy without it. So one should give up all material motives and train his mind by following the progressive regulative principles. Then the mind has to be trained. Trained means force the mind. Um, in what way to force it? Train means like somehow or other make the mind do it. Um, train his mind by following the progressive regulative principles, which is no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex. Train the mind in progressive regulative principles, because given a chance, we may want to break regulative principles. We may want to, different people have different desires, but then train it. No, not good. Force it not to get to these things. And um, following the progressive regulative principles, which involve these four things, plus follow these principles, namely chanting and remembering Krishna. Avoid these four principles, chant the holy names, remember Krishna and his name, form, qualities, pastimes, and so forth. Train the mind. Any material motives, give up, train the mind. This is for those who have not developed deep interest in Krishna consciousness, because once one develop a deep interest in Krishna consciousness, then chanting, remembering will be natural. Avoiding the things not to do will be natural. Then it's called a trained mind, and material motives will not be there. One will not have material motives and one will have pure devotion to Lord Krishna. But so this will become natural. It's not that we don't need to do at an advanced stage. It will just be a natural. Till that time, force material desires out and perform devotional service, hearing, chanting, like that. In this way, after developing a taste for such things, when you have developed a taste for hearing, chanting, one should try to live in Vrindavan. So now this is, when should we try to live in Vrindavan? Once we have taste for hearing, chanting, remembering, and no taste for material desires. Once that stage comes, or once we become deeply attached to Krishna, after developing a taste for such things, one should try to live in Vrindavan and pass his time constantly remembering Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, and qualities under the direction and protection of an expert devotee. So, first, try to not act on material desires, work on chanting, remembering, and hearing. This way, the mind will be purified. As material desires become lesser and lesser, by the purification of the heart, the taste in chanting and hearing will develop. Once the taste has been developed, then one should live in Vrindavan and pass his time constantly remembering Krishna's name, form, pastimes, and qualities under direction and protection of an expert devotee. One should always remember Krishna's name, fame, pastime, qualities under direction of an expert devotee. This is the sum and substance of all instruction regarding the cultivation of we are cultivating devotional service, but it has to be done under guidance, because if it is not done under guidance, then one may make mistakes and one may not be able to understand also. That's why under guidance, um, always remember the name, form, pastimes, and qualities of Lord Krishna after one has developed taste in hearing and chanting. Further continuing, in the neophyte stage, one should always engage in hearing Krishna Katha. So there is a beginning stage and there is an advanced stage. So neophyte stage, one should always engage in hearing Krishna Katha. The beginning, Prabhupada would say, the beginning of Krishna consciousness is Shravan, hear Krishna Katha. This is the beginning stage. This is called Shravan Dasa. Shravan Dasa means you hear a lot, the stage of hearing. By constantly hearing the transcendental holy name of Krishna and hearing of his transcendental form, his qualities, and his pastimes, you hear all these things. This is called Shravan Dasa. This is the beginning stage of devotional service. Hear about Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes. Then one can attain the stage of acceptance called Varana Dasa. Stage of acceptance means you have a spiritual master and then you understand that you are part and parcel of Krishna. You understand your relationship with Krishna. Just by hearing, you will understand your relationship with Krishna. So this is called Varana Dasa. Varana Dasa is also is actually a very advanced stage, the second stage itself. Till that time, the hearing will take us long way. Hear about Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes. Then once we start developing a deeper relationship with Krishna, we come to the stage of Varana Dasa. When one attains this stage, he becomes attached to hearing of Krishna Katha. At Varana Dasa, Krishna Katha is like nectar. And one hear about Krishna. As soon as one hear about Krishna, one becomes one becomes absorbed, one becomes deeply attached. In the beginning, hearing is not with absorption. In the beginning, hearing like this is nice, this is important, this is what I need to do. There's intellectual based hearing. But at an advanced stage, hearing is spontaneous. Spontaneous means with deep attraction, deep taste. That is called Varanadasa. So uh, one can attain the stage of acceptance called Varanadasa. When one attains this stage, he becomes attached to hearing of Krishna Katha. When one is able when one is able to chant in ecstasy, he attains the stage of Smaranavastha. So for Smaranavastha, one needs chanting to be ecstatic. Because unless the chanting is very deeply absorbing, Smaranavastha will not come. Smaranavastha means one is able to recollect, remember, and we will see, or the stage of remembering. The stage of remembering is a third stage. Um, so the first stage is Krishna Katha, hearing is Krishna Katha. Then the second stage is coming to know our relationship with Krishna, having deep deep taste in hearing about Krishna, um, and that is called Varana Dasa, the stage of acceptance. And then when one is deeply attached to Krishna Katha and one is able to chant with absorption, then comes the third stage, which is called Smaranavastha, or the stage of remembering. Stage of remembering have 5 sections: recollection, absorption, meditation, constant remembrance, and trance are the 5 items of progressive Krishna Smarana. Recollection means uh, basically whatever we heard, we recollect. This is called recollection. Absorption means whatever we heard, there is no need to artificially recollect. There is an absorption. You chant the holy name and you are absorbed. Meditation is deeper, but it still breaks intermittently. Constant remembrance is you remember Krishna constantly, and the trance or samadhi is the final stage. So it is further described. At first, remembrance of Krishna may be interrupted at intervals. Like we remember Krishna and the remembrance will go away. Then we remember Krishna and Krishna remembrance will go away. At first, remembrance of Krishna may be interrupted at intervals, but later remembrance proceeds uninterrupted. And later on, you can chant 16 rounds and you remember. And not only while chanting, rest of the day also, the remembrance, when we actually come to the stage of Smaranavastha, then the remembrance is throughout the day. Throughout the day, there is remembrance of Krishna. Anything you see in the stage of Smaranavastha, it reminds us of Krishna. Like example, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would see the ocean and he would think of Yamuna. He would see a small sand dune and he would think of Govardhan. Or like another example, this is very high example, but when Srimati Radharani sees a black tree, it's called Tamal tree. There are a particular trees called Tamal tree in Vrindavan. They are like blackish in complexion. Whenever Srimati Radharani sees that tree, she remembers of Krishna. She thinks the tree has his branches and she thinks here is Krishna with his hand standing here. So everything reminds her of Krishna. So it's like Smaranavastha. Um, Smaranavastha has many stages. In the beginning, the Smaran is very difficult. That's why Prabhupada says when one is able to chant in ecstasy, then comes the stage of Smaranavastha. Before that, Varnana Dasa is deep taste in hearing about Krishna. One cannot stop hearing about Krishna. One can sit for hours and hours hearing about Krishna. Till the time one has developed Varana, or the stage of acceptance and knowing one relationship with Krishna, the stage is Shavana Dasha. Shavana Dasha means hearing about Krishna. This Shavana Dasha goes for a very long time. And then comes Varana Dasha, and then comes Smaranavastha. which begins with recollection. And now I will continue. At first, remembrance of Krishna may be interrupted at intervals, but later remembrance proceed uninterrupted. Means everything reminds us of Krishna. Remembrance proceeds uninterrupted. When remembrance is uninterrupted, it becomes concentrated, and it is called meditation. So recollection is interrupted. We try. There is a lot of intellectual hearing. There is taste for Krishna Katha, and then attempt to recollect. That is Smaranavastha, which will also be possible only when all these 5 stages of Smarana are possible, when one is able to chant in ecstasy, and then there is sadhana. There is practice to attain deeper level of absorption in meditation. And then absorption is like um, um, remembrance of Krishna is uninterrupted. Remembrance proceeds uninterrupted. That is, we are absorbed there. Then we are absorbed. It just flows. For hours we can sit together and think of Krishna and Krishna's form and Krishna's qualities and Krishna's pastime. That's absorption. And when that becomes very deep, it becomes concentrated. Prabhupada says it becomes concentrated. It is called meditation. Meditation. And when meditation expands and becomes constant, it is called anusmriti. And meditation expands and becomes constant, means very concentrated remembrance of Krishna, and it is continuous throughout the day. It is actually, these are very advanced stages. It is called anusmriti. By uninterrupted and unceasing anusmriti, one enters the stage of samadhi or spiritual trance. So samadhi means 24 hours deeply concentrated absorption in Krishna and serving Krishna, and one is simultaneously living in Vrindavan and serving the Lord continuously throughout the day and night. This is called samadhi. Uninterrupted, unceasing anusmriti. Anusmriti is when meditation expands and becomes constant, and meditation is concentrated, uninterrupted remembrance of the Lord. But it all begins with recollection, is trying to remember the Lord. And that recollection begins with when one is able to chant in ecstasy. And that comes when one is deeply attached to hearing about Krishna. Um, and that comes by hearing Krishna Katha, hearing about the name, qualities, form, pastimes, and then Varanadasa, and then Smaranavastha. Smaranavastha, there is recollection, absorption, concentrated absorption is meditation. When the concentrated absorption becomes constant, it becomes constant remembrance or anusmriti, and then there is trance samadhi. It is also called dhruva anusmriti. Dhruva anusmriti means you are a siddha now. You have completely realized yourself. That is called dhruva anusmriti, the last stage, or Prabhupada also described as samadhi or spiritual trance. After smarana dasa or samadhi, one has fully developed, the soul comes to understand his original constitutional position, which is like, how do I serve the Lord eternally? At that time, he can perfectly and clearly understand his eternal relationship with Krishna. This is called Sampatti Dasha, or the perfection of life. And these are the stages that one takes for one to go back home, back to Godhead. Chaitanya Charitamrita advises that those who are neophytes to give up all kind of motivated desires and simply engage in regulated devotional service of the Lord according to the directions of scriptures. So those who do not have that, those who have not attained those advanced stages, it is recommended that one should give up all kind of motivated desires. If one is serious about going back to God in this life, then one should give up all kind of motivated desires and simply engage in regulated devotional service, which is hearing and chanting of the Lord according to direction of scriptures, and one should do it while giving up all kinds of motivated desires, material desires. In this way, a neophyte can gradually develop attachment to Krishna's name, form, qualities, and so forth. By sadhana bhakti, one will be attached to name, form, qualities, and so forth. When one has developed some such attachment, he can spontaneously serve the lotus feet of Krishna, even without following the regulatory principles. Means there is no need to try anymore. It's 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 spontaneous. It's natural. Deep attachment, concentrated attachment for Krishna. At that stage, the devotee can follow in the footsteps of one of the eternal associate of Krishna in Vrindavan. So then this stage comes. This verse is what is talking about this stage. This is this, as we discussed in the beginning, verse number 1 to verse number 11 goes from Shraddha to Prema. This verse we are talking is about Ruchi. So there is Shraddha, then if one has faith, there is Sadhu Sangha, one associate with devotees, then there is Bhajana Kriya. Through sadhus, one get the way to do bhajan, hearing and chanting, Bhajana Kriya. Then once we start doing Bhajana Kriya, then there is Anartha Nivrati, where the Anarthas goes away and one becomes steady, the stage of Nishtha. Anarthas goes away, one becomes steady. So this will all happen by the holy name. When Anarthas goes away and the mind is steady, no impurities, then comes the stage of Ruchi. Ruchi means this is after all impurities are gone. Deep attachment to Krishna. No pride, no lust, no envy, no anger, ahankar, illusion, greed. When these things go away and there is a deep taste and there is a deep attachment to Lord Krishna, that is a stage of Ruchi. And at the stage of Ruchi, the concentrated remembrance of Krishna is very deep. Then at that stage, the devotee can follow in the footsteps of one of the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan. This is called Raganuga Bhakti. So there is Vidhi Marg and there is Raganuga Bhakti. Vidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. Vidhi Bhakti means try not to act on material desires, try not to act on anarthas. Focus on hearing, focus on chanting, focus on reading. This is called Vidhi Marg. Then these things will give us concentrated remembrance, taste, which will replete us from, which will remove all the anarthas. Then once one can chant in ecstasy, then one should follow a resident of Vrindavan. This is what this verse speaks about today, is follow a resident of Vrindavan. But at that stage, at this point of time, the thought follow resident of Vrindavan, how do we follow? Where do we find a resident? What does it mean to follow? No need to understand that at this point of time. I also don't understand that. But when we are ready, Krishna will reveal to us the subject matter. So this is called Raganuga Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti or spontaneous devotional service can be executed in the Santaras when one aspires to be like Krishna's cows, or the stick or flute in the hand of Krishna. So there are 5 rasas. Raganuga Bhakti can be executed in Santaras when one wants to become a cow, when one aspires to be like Krishna's cow. This happens when we hear about how cows love Krishna. Then we'll be like, wow, I want Krishna to touch me, to milk me, to grace me, to call me by my name. I want to hear Krishna's flute. I want to be protected. I want to enter Krishna's shelter. So this is like one aspired to be like Krishna's cow, or a stick or a flute in the hand of Krishna, or the flower around Krishna's neck. One may have that desire. That is Santaras. In the Dasyaras, one follows in the footsteps of servants like Chitrak, Patrak, or Raktak. There are various servants. One hears about how Patrak dresses Krishna, how he makes a turban for Krishna, how he is with Mother Yashoda when Mother Yashoda wakes up Krishna, how he bathes Krishna, how he brings food for Krishna, how. So this is um, when one hear about the activities and their service to Lord Krishna, one may develop a desire, I want to serve Krishna like this. So Raganuga Bhakti means in Dasya Ras one follow the footsteps of these associates. In friendly Sakhya Ras one can become a friend of Lord Baladev. One can become a friend like Lord Baladev, Sridama or Sudama. Then one may hear about how Balaram friends serves Krishna, or Sridama or Sudama, how they play tug of war, how they wrestle, how they eat food together, how they play blow horns together, how they run together, how they joke together, how they make fun of each other, how they spend their whole day together. And when one hears about these associates of Lord Krishna in Sakhya Ras, um, and one develop a desire, I want to be like one of these friends of Krishna. Um, um, then one follows one of these friends of Krishna whom you want to be like. If you want, like they all have their own individual characteristics. Sri Rama has one nature, Subal has one, Madhumangal has one, Sudama has one. So Balaram is naturally the leader of all of them. So one may like Sakyaras when one goes deeper, then one may like a particular associate of Lord Krishna in Sakyaras. And then one may want to become like that particular associate in Sakyaras. And then one and that liking and that desire to be like a particular devotee, that is called Raganuga Bhakti. Following a resident of Vrindavan based on one's relationship with Krishna. Then in Vatsalya Ras, characterized by paternal affection, one can become like Nanda Maharaj or Yashoda. One will be attracted like, I want to make butter for Krishna. I want Krishna to steal butter that I make. I want to tie Krishna around his belly. Uh, or I want to embrace Krishna when he gets up. Um, mm, I want to cook for Krishna, feed him lunch. Or, once when one hears about how Mother Yashoda loves Krishna, and one is like, wow, these Krishna childhood pastimes of stealing butter, I want to witness those. I want Krishna like my son. I want to love him like my son. Many devotees have these desires. So when these desires, when they will come, based on our spiritual advancement. And hearing is the first, which is called Shavana Dasa. Hearing, and the anarthas will go away. Hearing and chanting, anarthas will go away, and we hear about Krishna and we hear about the associates of Krishna. Something will strike, and then one may develop a desire at an advanced stage. I want to be like this Vaishnav or this Vaishnavi. And then if one wants, Prabhupada says, one can become like Nanda Maharaj or Yashoda. Now it is also described, we will see in our Nectar of Devotion seminars, that we cannot become Yashoda because that position is already taken by Yashoda, but we can become like Yashoda. Like Yashoda means we can serve Mother Yashoda and she will engage us in the similar rasa. Okay, can you go and wake up Krishna today? Yes, I will go and wake up Krishna today. So in that way, one can serve like Mother Yashoda, and all the desires can be fulfilled in spiritual world. So one can become like Nanda Maharaj Yashoda, or in Madhurya Ras, characterized by conjugal love, one can become like Srimati Radharani, or her lady friends such as Lalita and her serving maids, Manjaris, like Rupa and Rati. This is the essence of all instruction in the matter of devotional service. This particular verse is very deep verse in a way, because we are talking about, as I described, this nectar of instruction goes from Shraddha all the way to Prema, and right now we are discussing about Ruchi, and Ruchi is a stage which is quite far out, and then it becomes little difficult to relate to that stage. But now here is the summary of this particular verse. Beginning with, one should hear about Krishna, one should chant 16 rounds, one should accept a spiritual master, one should serve the mission, try to share the mission with others, try to render various kind of services in the temple, try to engage in devotional service 24 hours a day, try to hear about Krishna, about Krishna's form, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's associates, while engaging our time 24 hours in some way or other serving Krishna. This will gradually help us to purify our heart. Slowly the anarthas will start reducing. Slowly the taste in holy name will increase. Slowly we will develop attraction to Vrindavan, attraction to Krishna, attraction to Krishna's relationships, devotees with Krishna in various rasas, attraction to them. The chanting will go deeper, remembrance will come, and then this is a gradual process of purifying, hearing, remembering, and one will start developing a desire, a eagerness. I want to serve Krishna like this. And then when one decides, I want to serve Krishna like this, one hears more and more about how one wants to serve Krishna. One tries to remember how one wants to serve Krishna. One tries to become absorbed in the mood. And externally, one still act as a sadhaka, serving. It's not that when one is in this mood of internal internal progress in Krishna consciousness, one gives up services in the temple, or gives up pot washing, or gives up deity worship, or gives up preaching, or gives up various activities. That's why now I'm going to the verse which I said I will explain at the end. So one externally act just like the way one act day 1, day 2, 1 year, 2 year, 10 year, 20 year, 40 year, 50 year, 70 years, how much ever devotional service we are entering, externally nothing changes. That is called the service in sadhaka group. Externally nothing changes throughout the life. Internal meditations become more and more refined, clear, directed towards the goal. And then one hears and the heart becomes purified. Now I'm talking about the internal. Externally, nothing changes throughout the life. Throughout the life. But internally, there is struggle phase, offensive stage, clearance of offensive stage, purification of anarthas phase, um, absorption phase, then deep hearing phase with the absorption, recollection, meditation phase, remembering the Lord and his activities and his pastimes and his form, remembrance phase, and then then one start developing an attraction for Vrindavan, attraction towards Krishna, like a real attraction towards Krishna. um, it is said in the beginning stages, attraction is towards the holy name alone. I just want to chant in an absorbed manner. But as the anathas become purified, then the attractions start becoming towards the holy name and the personality of Krishna. Initially, not much attraction towards Krishna. How Krishna looks, how Krishna smiles, how Krishna behaves, how Krishna deals with his associates. No attraction towards those things, only attraction to holy name. Holy name, the attraction to holy name expands, and one becomes simultaneously attracted to holy name and the personality of Krishna. And then attached to Vrindavan, attached to Krishna, and the holy name attraction goes on till forever. But now added attraction to Vrindavan, attraction to Krishna, attracted to a particular relationship with Krishna, attracted to an associate of Krishna, then a desire that I want to serve Krishna in this relationship, like this devotee. And then comes a stage of following that particular devotee whom we want to be attracted. And then there's a very long phase of following. When absorbed in that mood, one starts serving Lord Krishna internally in that mood, just like an associate of Krishna is serving. We start serving under their guidance. in Vrindavan in that mood. Continues. And then at the time of death, one is transferred to uh, where Krishna is performing pastimes. One is transferred to that location, and one is naturally kept under the guidance of that particular associate, and one is further trained. And that time we are there where Krishna is currently performing pastimes. And then once we are fully purified, because some vestiges still remain, once we are fully purified and trained to 100% serve Krishna without any any exterior motive, um, uh, like like gold, pure, then one is transferred to go back to Bharat to spiritual world. Okay, so I think that's the summary. I will take question just after reading this verse again. This is what I said. Let's read it again. Hopefully, this paragraph will become clear now. Very important verse. Again, Srila Rupa Goswami states in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1 to 295, which we will discuss when we come to our Nectar of Devotion seminar. सेवा साधक रूपेण सिद्ध रूपेण चत्र हि तद्भावलिप्सुना कार्या व्रज लोकानुसारतः. Now let us read it slow and see if we understand it. In the transcendental realm of Raja, again we are talking about Ruchi. When one has developed deep absorption in Lord Krishna, then one resides in Vrindavan naturally because one has that attachment. In the transcendental realm of Raja, Rajadham, one should serve the Supreme Lord Krishna with a feeling similar to that of his associates. Means later on Prabhupada described feeling like Mother Yashoda, feeling like Srimati Radharani, Lalita and Vishaka, feeling like Sridama, Subal and Balaram, feeling like Chatrak Patrak, feeling like the cows. So in that way, one should serve Supreme Lord Shri Krishna with a feeling similar to that of his associate, and one should place himself under the direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna. And then one tries to, when hears about associate of Krishna, like say how Sridama serves Krishna, how he plays with Krishna, how what all activities he do, how he wrestles with Krishna, then one tries to keep himself under a particular associate of Lord Krishna. Under the direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna, one should follow in his footsteps of that particular associate. This method is applicable both in the stage of sadhana. That's why it's called seva sadhaka rupena siddha rupena chatrahi. So in the form of just like, okay, this is another complex way, something more complex. Okay, let's try this. This method is applicable both in the stage of sadhana, spiritual practices executed while in the stage of bondage, and in the stage of sadhya, God realization, when one is siddha purusha or a spiritually perfect soul. Let's understand it in two different ways. One way is um, one is always under guidance. At the stage of sadhaka, one directly take the instruction from a spiritual master, and follows the guidance of spiritual master. At an advanced stage, spiritual master inspires the devotee that you serve, or he basically reveals the devotee how he serves Krishna, and then he places the devotee under the guidance of an associate of Lord Krishna. So at the stage of sadhak and at the stage of siddha or perfected stage, one is always under the guidance. Yeah, the inner bhakti gradually deepens and develops. Now there is one more aspect. I'll explain. I will say it, and if devotees have question, I can take it also. Then another aspect of this is uh, all the associate of Lord Krishna, they came along with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All the associate of Lord Krishna came, just like Subal Sakha came as Gauridas Pandit. He or Lalita Sakhi came as Swarup Damodar Goswami. Vishaka Sakhi came as Ramananda. Yashoda Maya came as Sachi Mata. So how now, many of you may not have heard these names. So there is Lord Krishna's pastimes and there is pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. One externally acts like the associates of Lord Chaitanya. And what were the common activities of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates? Hearing about Krishna, discussing about Krishna with devotees, chanting the names of Krishna, sharing the message of Lord Krishna with others. This is called sadhaka roop, where one is doing sadhana and performing all these 9 forms of devotional service, sadhaka roop. And siddha roop is how that particular associate eternally serves Krishna in Vrindavan. How that happened, that is called siddha roop. So one simultaneously serve in sadhaka roop and one internally serves in siddha roop. Internal progress or internal service in siddha roop is hidden, confidential. External is just like the association of Lord Chaitanya. That's one way to see it. And another way to see it is in sadhaka roop, which is beginning stage of devotional service. One is always under guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, and an advanced stage, which is siddha roop, one is under guidance of a perfected soul. So both are applicable to us. So let's see, are there any uh, question, discussion, or was it clear? Was it very complex to understand? I tried my best. Somebody would like to say, were we able to understand, or was it too difficult to understand?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, able to understand but little bit complex Prabhuji.
But were you able to understand still?
Yes Prabhuji.
Little bit. Okay. This particular verse is actually a very complex verse. And hopefully, as we make progress in our Krishna consciousness, these things becomes clear more and more gradually with time. Gradually with time, they will reveal us more and more. At this point of time, our main essence remains chanting 16 rounds, hearing about Lord Krishna, and eating Krishna Prasad, serving devotees and serving in the temple. And that's all, and accepting a bona fide spiritual master. And this particular verse speaks about when Krishna consciousness deepens beyond a certain stage, then what happens? And that's why this topic is very difficult, because what we are talking about is far off, and it becomes very difficult to relate at this point of time. But since we are in the progression of this book, we'll discuss the subject matter anyhow. Anybody else has any question? Soumya Mataji?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I don't have any doubts, but I'm traveling tomorrow to India, Prabhuji.
For how long will be there?
6 weeks I'm traveling.
You can still join our discussions from India.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, I'm planning to join.
But how much were you able to understand today?
I was able to understand, but
Very difficult.
yeah, yes, Prabhuji.
Okay.
I mean, we still at the starting stage, very first step only, Prabhuji. That's what we are thinking.
Yeah, somehow this verse came in the natural flow, and then I had to explain. I tried my best to explain. But anyways, if you didn't understand much from this, there is no loss.
But yeah, we are doing, as you said, we are doing that 16 rounds, eating Krishna Prasadam and hearing about Krishna. And Prabhuji, I just started Bhagavata and it's going well, Prabhuji.
Wonderful. So I guess, okay, so that's all I can offer at this point of time as of today. And I'll take leave and we'll meet again next week and we discuss about Srimati Radharani, because Saturday is Radha Ashtami. So on Sunday, and actually last 3 verse discusses about Radharani. That's the end of the instructions actually. For the first 8, the last 3 discusses about what is Vrindavan, what is the highest place in Vrindavan, who is Srimati Radharani, those subject matter which are very interesting. So we will see those 3 verses and that will be the end of this book. My obeisances to all of you. One chakal pataru vaishya kripa sindhu evacha patita nam pavane vaishnava namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnavendra ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If I spoke anything wrong, please forgive me as a humble servant. Dandavad Pranam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dhanavad Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.